Now, earlier reports indicated that it was a dam that had broken its banks, but later on it was, indicated that indeed there was no dam in that particular region, but it was just, a temporary water catchment area that had been, brought about by a clogged, section of an old railway tunnel. They call it a gully that, had accumulated water owing to the heavy rains that have been experienced in various parts of the country, and eventually it, of course, broke its banks, leading to, several people, hundreds of families being affected directly and indirectly, with many of them, of course, still not knowing the whereabouts of most of their kin as rescue operations, continue in that part of the country. We'll be looking at that this particular morning here on the Morning Drift, and of course the government response, as the government being up to standard in regards to matters response to this particular calamity, because as it stands, the government said they've set aside or released 1 billion to mitigate the effects of the flash floods, but according to the government spokesperson Isaac Maura, there were just a few things that were needed to be sorted out before the funds were released to the those in need of these particular funds. As per yesterday night, remember, up to now, at least 160 people have lost their lives across the country to the flooding situation in the country. And of course, we'll be continuing to keep tabs with that particular situation amid rage from a section of parents following the decision by the Ministry of Education to issue a press release on Monday at 1 a.m. in regards to the postponement of the reopening of schools across the country. Many parents caught unaware, as many of them, thousands, had sent their children back to school, only to realize later in the morning that indeed the Ministry of Education had decided to postpone the reopening of schools. That, of course, puts the Ministry of Education on the spot yet again in regards to how prepared were they, why issue such a very important press release on a very, very important matter at that particular time of the night. 1 a.m. we expect most students who are going to school, most parents already asleep. They'll be waking up in the morning, probably 5, 4, getting their children ready to go to school, and of course by 6 they'll be on their way to school, but only to realize later on that indeed the reopening of schools had been postponed. That is, of course, one of the things that will form basis of a conversation this particular morning. The flooding situation, the government response, among many other things as well, including the conversation now surrounding the hiring of public servants on contractual basis as proposed by a public service CS, Moses Kuria, over the permanent and pensionable basis. Kuria says that is, of course, in a bid to ensure that government can reduce its wage bill, but that has, of course, elicited mixed reactions from Kenyans from all walks of life. We'll be also looking into that. And in the sporting world, remember, the UEFA Champions League semi-finals resume tonight with Bayern Munich playing against Real Madrid, and in the other semi-finals set to be played tomorrow will be PSG taking on the black and yellow of Germany, that is Borussia Dortmund. Now, on that note, we just take a brief breather. We'll be back with what's making headlines in the newspapers this morning. Now, thank you very much for staying with us. Just so you know, you can watch this particular breakfast show live on our Facebook and YouTube pages at Lookuptv. And of course, you can as well talk to us. What do you make of the response by the government in countering the flooding situation amid the high number of deaths recorded up to now? And we now jump straight to the newspaper review. We'll get to have a look at what's making headlines in the local dailies this morning. And I beg we begin with the Standard, and they call it the deluge of death. They say residents near Kijabe Dam were warned about rapidly rising waters, but no action was taken, and thereafter an entire village was caught unawares at night as flood waters swept everything on its way. On the front page, you can clearly see the situation from an aerial point of view of how roads and everything that stood on the way was swept away by the raging waters. And as per yesterday, the official figures that we had had been reported was 45 people had lost their lives, but of course we understand the numbers rose. 150 was the number of people who sought treatment at the Mai Mahiu Health Center, with the Standard reporting that at least 25 were referred to Naivasha Sub-County Hospital. Now reports that we gathered indicate that at least 32 had been referred to Naivasha Sub-County Hospital to at least get specialized medical treatment. Now, right at the bottom of the Standard, they say, houses swept by raging waters over Kijabe Dam at Mai Mahiu in Nakuru County yesterday. And of course, you can see a photo of, Red Cross workers rescuing victims. And of course, they say 45 were confirmed dead as per yesterday. And just so you know, like I said, is that initially it was thought, or if anything, the information that several media houses had as per yesterday was that it was a dam that had burst its banks, but later on it was established that indeed there was no dam in that particular region. And like I explained, and of course on page 2, you can get a pictorial representation of the havoc that was caused by the raging waters in Mai Mahiu, Naivasha, Nakuru County. Of course, an easy coach bus caught in the middle of all that, and of course nobody was injured in that particular bus. You can see residents, some of them looking so helpless, having lost everything. You can also see houses destroyed to everything literally. Most of the residents in that particular region did not manage to save anything, because this situation unfolded as from 2 a.m. Monday morning, between 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. on Monday morning. Now, the deputy president led the government team to, rather than visiting victims over that particular tragedy. And you can see as well a photo of the deputy president just getting a view, or rather a glimpse of the situation from his chopper. Now, we'll continue to keep you updated in regards to that particular situation, as residents say this is the worst tragedy to ever hit that particular area, noting that according to what they say is that the area has not experienced heavy rainfall as compared to other regions in the country. Now, you can read that story on page 2, 3, 4 as well. On page 4, and they say on page 4, trail of death and destruction as heavy rains pound the country. Now they have figures right in the middle of rather on the downward side of the newspaper on page 4. They say 69 people have died, 59 people injured, 17 missing, 33 out of 47 counties affected, over 25,000 households affected, 11 critical facilities, 9 the number of health facilities that have been flooded, 35 schools destroyed. And that of course just shows the reason as to why the education ministry had to intervene and ensure that the reopening of schools was rescheduled for by another 1 week. Now 481 is the number of businesses that were hampered. Over 5,700 livestock were lost in that particular, in the period that we've experienced heavy rains. Now there's several camps that have been set across in different parts of the country. 10 camps in Busia County, 9 in Kisumu, 3 in Homa Bay, 2 in Migori, and 2 in Kirinyaga County. That is the main story across the Standard newspaper this particular morning. And of course, we'll be talking about that in our big conversation this particular morning. But just before we jump straight to the Daily Nation, on the back page of the Standard is what they call Madrid wary of ban in European Classico. Remember today, like I said, Bayern Munich will be playing against Real Madrid, the record European champions, in the Allianz Arena. Tomorrow, Borussia Dortmund will be hosting Paris Saint-Germain in the Signal Iduna Park. Of course, again, on the back page, we see Man City on Arsenal in EPL title race. Currently, Arsenal lead Manchester City by a point, although City do have a game in hand that will be, a tight race as we head into the tail end of the English Premier League. Now we jump or cross over rather to the Daily Nation, and still they call it Black Monday. They say nature's fury. Vehicles on the Nairobi-Maimayu Road were also swept away by the raging waters. Now, death at dawn is what they call it, when the residents of Jerusalem and Kamushiri villages in Maimayu retired to bed on Sunday night after a day spent attending church service with loved ones, visiting with family and friends, or preparing their children for school. They looked forward to a new busy week. But best known to them, tragedy lay in wait uphill in a gully that had collected massive flood waters. And then, early yesterday, a slurry of mud, rocks, and trees came down, sweeping away everything in its path, leaving 46 people and counting dead. Now, whatever you have on the front page of the Daily Nation, clarifies what I've just told you a few moments ago, is that there was no dam in that particular area, because like they say here on the Daily Nation, tragedy lay in wait uphill in a gully that had collected massive flood waters, clearly indicating that it was not a dam. Now, according to the Daily Nation, 46 bodies have been recovered as the search for victims continues. 102 people rescued and are recuperating at the Maimayu and Naivasha sub-county hospital. Now, that story, you can get more on that story on pages 2 and 3. Again, a pictorial representation of the situation. And, of course, the confirmation that there was no dam in that area, and the water that, caused the havoc in that particular part of the country was from a gully, was confirmation from, the Water Regulatory Authority chief, because they say flood waters came from a gully. WRA chief now claims, they say the raging waters that killed 46 and left dozens injured in Maimayu on Monday did not originate from a dam, but rather from a water tunnel at Kianduma area that was blocked from a temporary dam. That was blocked, rather, forming a temporary dam before it burst and swept through the low-lying areas. Of course, that was according to the Water Resources Authority Chief Executive Officer Mohammed Shuri. Now, like I said, you can read more on that story on page 2-3 of the Daily Nation. Again, on the front page is the controversy surrounding the postponement of the reopening of schools, and they say confusion over school reopening as Machogu defense move. They say thousands of primary and secondary school students trooped their respective schools early yesterday and aware that the government had pushed forward the opening dates for the second term by a week. The late night announcement caught many parents unawares, as many of them had already sent their children to school. That is one of the things that we'll be talking about as well this particular morning. But just talking, different matters now. On page 12, they say, for cheap loans, Kenya yields to tough World Bank conditions. Remember, Kenya is hosting the International Development Association Summit 2024 right here at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, where at least 20 heads of state from African countries attended that particular event. Of course, the Heads of State Summit was yesterday, chaired by President William Ruto. They say 16 trillion is the amount of money that heads of state are seeking from the International Development Association, an increase from 12.4 trillion raised in the last funding round in 2021. 75 is the number of developing nations around the world which benefit from low interest rate loans from IDA, which operates on a three-year cycle. Now, that is, of course, what forms basis of the, that is what is making headlines on the newspapers this morning. But just before we briefly jump to what's making headlines in the making headlines this particular morning, is that on the back page of the Daily Nation is a very, very important story, because they say vetting committees for ID applicants now scrapped. Remember, the government scrapped the issue of vetting for those seeking to apply for identity cards. And of course, yesterday, the PS for Immigration and Interior, that is Raymond Omolo and Julius Bitok, had a press conference. And of course, the new rules will affect border counties. But now, that raises a lot of questions in regards to if vetting will not be done, how will that affect the security situation here in the country? We'll continue to follow up that story for you. Now, on that note, we just briefly take a breather, and then we'll be back with what's making headlines this morning. Don't go away. It's now time where we get to look at the news making headlines, and we begin with the Mai Mai tragedy. And at least 50 people have been confirmed dead and others missing after raging waters hit Mai Mai, Naivasha, and Nakuru County, sweeping away homes and vehicles as the country grapples with weeks of heavy rains and devastating flash floods. Now, rescue teams are digging through the mud and debris trying to find survivors near Mai Mai. It is a tragic incident that has left residents across 4 villages in Mai Mai, Nakuru County in unbearable agony. Most of the area residents going to bed on Sunday night unaware of what was awaiting them in the wee hours of Monday morning.
Mesikia maukuta zikibomolewa na maji. Sasa ndio wakati tumeamuka hivi, tumeamusha watoto. Tukaanza kuhangaika mahali ya kutokea. Maji ikajaa kwa nyumba hivi, katuzungusha, katuleta mpaka juu. Nikangangana, nimeshika mtoto kadogo ya miezi 7 hivi na mkono. Mwingine miaka 3, wengine 2 tena. Na hawa ndugu zangu tukangangana mpaka nikaweza kubomoa mabati.
It is reported that the raging waters that originated from a gully near a railway line that was blocked, thus forming a temporary water catchment over time, swept through the villages at around 2 a.m. in the morning. An incident that has left at least 50 people dead, with a number expected to rise.
Kwa na majirani nyumba yao ilibomolewa yote, wote walienda kama nyumba 2. Watu wote walienda. Mali yetu ile ilikuwa hapo nje, pikipiki zangu 3 yote ilienda na maji. Hakuna kitu tuko na, hata nguo ni kusaidia, nimesaidiwa asubuhi.
Following the incident, hundreds of area residents are counting losses to the tune of millions as they were caught in a catch-22 situation. The important thing at the time being saving themselves from impending danger.
Ni wengi wametolewa hata wakiwa wameaga dunia hapa chini. Hapa tu chini hapa. Wametolewa wengi sana hapo. Ukiwa mauti. Kwa nyumba hakuna kitu nimebakisha. Ni hiyo tu umeona hapo, kaba tu imebakishwa hapo na hiyo kitanda. Kuna kitu kingine nimebakisha kwa nyumba.
The intensity of the flash floods remain visible in the vast Kijabe area, with the waters sweeping through 4 villages, ravaging through houses, vehicles and any other thing on the way. And as darkness takes over, residents remain in the dark, uncertain of where they will spend the night and what will unfold amid expected heavy rains, with some of them unaware of where their kins are. At least 109 people were rescued with minor injuries, were taken to the Maimayu Health Center, with 32 others transferred to the Naivasha Sub-County Hospital for specialized treatment. Up to this moment in time, Lookuptv has been able to establish that at least 49 people from 26 families are still missing, with responders digging through the rubble to try and rescue those trapped. The Kenya Red Cross has pitched tent at Ngeya Girls Secondary School in Naivasha Sub-County amid calls for those with missing kins to file missing persons report in a bid to get clear details on the number of those still missing. Ian Keitane, Lookuptv. Now, the government is calling on Kenyans living in areas that are prone to floods to evacuate to safer grounds. This comes as floods swept Maimayu last night, rather on Sunday night, leaving a trail of destruction and death. And as Brian Amwai now reports, the Ministry of Interior has directed that any Kenyan found putting their lives at risk by crossing flooded rivers will be arrested.
Last night's floods left a trail of death and destruction. Maimayu from above is an area marooned with traces of water evident from a high altitude. The color of earth brown, an indication that the floods left a trail, and in this trail lies bodies of people that were unfortunate enough to have met the wrath of nature. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, on a tour to the affected region, called on the residents and Kenyans to take care and avoid areas that are prone to floods.
Kenya. Kwa hivyo mimi naomba our people, tafadhali, madriver wa malori, wa matatu, wa bodaboda, please don't dare nature. Kwa sababu mimi naona na ninasikia huzuni sana. Watu wakitembea wanakuta pahali maji iko na fujo, inatembea ikiwa na fujo mingi sana. Wagari wanaelekeza ngari huko ndani imebeba watu, wanasobwa na maji, wanapotesha maisha yao, wanawacha familia zao zikiumia. Hata kama wewe ni kijana na unaona uko na umaarufu sana, ujue uko na bibi na uko na watoto, na yule bibi na wale watoto wanakuhitaji.
Tunaomba Wakenya wetu wote kutoka pwani mpaka Turkana mpaka huko kisiwani Kisumu, naomba sana kila sehemu ambayo kuna maji mtusaidie kuhakikisha kwamba madereva na waendeshaji wa magari wa kila aina wahakikishe kwamba mmelinda maisha ya mwananchi wa kawaida. Kama Wizara ya Barabara na Uchukuzi, kazi yetu hivi sasa ni kuhamasisha wananchi wajiondoe kwa sehemu hatari, lakini pia tunawahamasisha kuhakikisha kwamba wamefuata maagizo ya kisheria.
The DP said the government has put in measures to ensure that all Kenyans are safe and sound and will get the help they need as far as bedding and food is concerned, and also a place to stay.
Kwa hivyo tumekuja pia kuleta usaidizi kwa ile primary school. Watu wale wako katika area ambaye tunaona tunaweza kuwa na shida watasonga hapo. Tumekuja na mattresses karibu 1000, tumekuja na blanketi, tumekuja na chakula, na tutaendelea kuleta chakula zaidi, tutaendelea kusaidia mpaka tuone ya kwamba hatupotezi maisha na tumelinda watu wetu. Tukifikiria tutafanya namna gani.
Mwisho, idara yetu ya barabara ikiwa pamoja na Kena wako tayari. Tumeweka makontrakta kwa kila kona ya Kenya kuhakikisha ya kwamba pahali ambapo tunaweza tunafungua barabara kwa haraka.
Drivers are to be wary of the unsafe roads, as Transport CS says his ministry is on high alert. Interior CS Kithure Kindiki has sounded a warning to those who risk their lives crossing flooded rivers and roads that they will be faced with the full force of the law. The CS also instructed inspection of all dams to ascertain the safety of those around areas that have dams, with recommendations for evacuation expected to be made after investigations. Scavenging through what is left behind in search of both the people they lost and what they owned, the future here looks bleak as the Meteorological Department warns of more rains in days to come. Brian Amwai, Lookuptv.
Now, the government has advised Kenyans to take precaution in the wake of the ongoing heavy rains. So far, Kenya has lost at least 103 people due to the flooding across the country, according to government spokesperson Isaac Mwaura. Ebikadenyi tells us more.
As Kenyans continue to be affected by the floods that is wreaking havoc all over, government spokesperson Isaac Mwaura now says over 100 people have so far died in the floods, calling on Kenyans to take precaution. Speaking in Mombasa County, Mwaura said that schools reopening have been postponed by 1 week in order to give the government time to come up with safety measures that will ensure the students are not affected by the floods. Mwaura further added that the government is going to send food aid to the affected families.
Those who may have on transit today and they've had to first reach school before they go back. And that decision, we are calling upon the head teachers to be cautious about it, such that if they've already arrived at the destination and going back will make them to be to face the risk of flooding, again the principal should make the best decision for the best interest of that student or that child.
Mwaura explained that Rift Valley is the most affected region, with 21 people reported dead, 21 people injured, and 21 persons reported missing. In Nairobi, 32 people have been reported dead, 28,484 households displaced, and 195,297 people affected by the floods. In Kilifi County, 1,800 people have been affected, as 650 households displaced due to the flooding of River Sabaki and its tributaries. The government has further urged Kenyans to stay safe and exercise caution by avoiding flooded areas and those staying at river banks to relocate after several rivers burst their banks. Ebikadenyi for the Spotlight.
Now, flood victims continue to get donations from well-wishers. In Mathare, Pastor Dorcas Rigathi made a return visit to the area that is the hardest hit in Nairobi County. She, together with the Nairobi Woman Representative Esther Pesaris and area DCC Jeff Minor, distributed foodstuffs, solar lamps, kitchen utensils and sanitary towels to families affected by floods.
In Mathare's informal settlement, the sound of rain brings fear instead of joy as it results in significant losses for many residents. Among those hardest hit are women and children with their homes devastated by persistent flood waters, leaving some too young to fully understand the extent of the disaster. In the midst of the devastating situation, Pastor Dorcas Rigathi, the spouse of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, for the second consecutive day continued her efforts in Mathare area by distributing food and non-food items to those affected by the floods. She pledged to persist in her efforts to aid those impacted by the fury of Mother Nature, promising ongoing assistance to alleviate their hardships.
Kuja tuchukue ile tutaweza, alafu tutatafuta ajira, kila mtu ajipatie chakula. Mimi ningetaka tufike mahali kila mtu ako na ajira na anajipatia mradi ya kila siku. Ndio maboys wa mama, tumesema leo munikubalie nikiomba muache kina mama waende kwanza, si ndio?
Joined by Nairobi County Women Representative Esther Pesaris, who stressed the need for caution and urged Kenyans to refrain from confronting the floods, recognizing them as a natural disaster.
Serikali yetu inajali watu wetu. Serikali imeona kuwa Kenya nzima kuna shida. Na hata leo tunatarajia mvua zaidi ya kuliko jana. So kitu tunataka kuwaambia, tafadhali pale muko usipigane na hali ya hii floods, kwa sababu floods ni natural disaster, na mukipigana nayo mumeona, tumesikia mabasi zinaenda na watu, matrucks zinaenda na watu, magari zinaenda na watu, hata watu wanaoshwa na hiyo mafuriko, si ndio? So lazima muwe very very careful.
George Kayesi, Lookuptv.
Now, still on Manchester's floods is that 52 passengers traveling in an AIC Moi Girls Moral School bus narrowly escaped death after the bus they were traveling in was swept away by floods. Samburu County Head of Police Thomas Utoto confirmed that the passengers who were from a wedding in Marsabit are safe. Elsewhere, police, with the help of Nyahururu residents, have retrieved the body of a 54-year-old man who was swept away by raging floods last evening while crossing a flooded bridge. The body of the deceased was taken to Nyahururu County Referral Hospital mortuary.
Elsewhere, 52 passengers have survived death after the bus they were traveling was carried away by floods at Suradoru area in Samburu County. Francis Renare, her driver who uses the Wamba Marara road, has urged the government to renovate the road, saying that the road is in a bad condition.
Juzi leo pia kuna shida ya maji, tunaomba serikali at least waweke daraja hii barabara, manake watu wanaumia sana hapa. Pia kuna magari mengi imebebwa hii barabara, shida ni mingi kwa hii barabara. Serikali tunaomba sana mtusaidie, muangalie mambo ya barabara. Iwapo kuna mgonjwa hapa hivi, mtu atakufia barabara tu kabla hajafika hospitalini kwa sababu hii barabara.
6 people have lost their lives after a landslide hit their house, killing 3 adults, 3 children in Madhioya area, Murang'a County. The landslide affected 3 homes, destroying a 3-acre land.
Murang'a County experiences disasters, especially landslides. And when it comes to the landslides, we have Kangema sub-county that gets affected so much. We have Madhioya sub-county. We have Kigumo sub-county. We have some part of Kahuro sub-county. I know most of the households were not affected, but then all the farm crops were submerged in water. So what I can advise the community of Murang'a is, let's be cautious. In case of anything, call us. We have our toll-free numbers 1199, and then we have Murang'a County offices.
The police in Nyahururu sub-county, with the help of residents, have successfully retrieved the body of a 54-year-old man who was swept away by floods while crossing a bridge after River Gadhara broke its banks.
Kisaida imetulete hapa, kuna mzee mmoja wa hapa tu hapa kwetu kijiji. Hiyo maji alikuwa anataka kupita, hiyo maji ikamchukua. Sasa hata alikuwa amefunikwa pale na hiyo majani ya mto ilikuwa imemfunika pale.
And in Siaya County, Governor James Orengo has asked the government to release mitigation funds that they were allocated to all 47 counties. Orengo has criticized the government for delaying to release the money in appropriate time, considering that the nation is facing floods due to the heavy rains.
The other thing that is doing of killing our constitutional order is by delaying remittances to the counties. The counties are not getting their money in time.
Daniel Omayo, Lookuptv.
The government, of course, announced the postponement of the scheduled reopening of schools to Monday, the 6th of May 2024. That was according to Education CS Ezekiel Machogu, who cited concerns over the adverse effects of ongoing floods, which have significantly impacted some schools. The last-minute announcement caused confusion among learners, parents, and guardians who had already taken their kids to school.
This was the scenes on Monday morning. Bus stops with students ready to go to school, oblivion of the late-night communique. At Kajiado Township Primary School, students had already reported for the second-term studies, only to be turned back and instructed to come next week when schools will reopen on the 6th of May 2024, as per the directive from the Ministry of Education.
Kama walimu wajipange wasikie kama wangekuwa wametuambia jana, ili tusiharibu nauli bure. Sasa bado nilikuwa naenda kufanya, lakini hata pesa nauli nimeshaitumia.
Parents who had already arrived in Kajiado Town to accompany their children to different schools were surprised after receiving the information, saying that the government should inform parents earlier for them to prepare adequately.
Pokea taarifa wakati nimefika hii town na nilikuwa nampeleka Kajiado Boys Primary School.
Okay. So ningeonelea kama ni vizuri wao wanaweka fixed date ambayo inafaa kwa watoto, hata kama changamoto kama hizi zinaweza tokea, wangekuwa wanatangaza hiyo kitu mapema kuliko cost wazazi waumie, alafu tena baadaye waanze kusema shule itafunguliwa siku fulani.
Elsewhere in Kisumu County, parents have shown their disappointment with the manner in which the government announced the change in school reopening dates. Kupet Executive Secretary Kisumu County Zabulon Awange criticized the government for making such an important communication in the wee hours of the night rather than doing it earlier.
Despite the fact that the notice was given very late at night and most of our students are stranded, some of the teachers also have reported, we are demanding that the government must declare the floods a disaster. So as a union, we are saying that the government must ensure that the disaster teams are on the ground to ensure that the schools are ready by next week.
Maureen Bosire, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
Of course, that particular story as well forms basis of our conversation this particular morning. Why did the government, especially the Ministry of Education, release or issue a press release regarding the postponement of the reopening of schools at 1 a.m. just a few hours before various schools across the country opened its doors to rather for the second term? That after this short break.
Once again, tuko hapa Angel Center for Abandoned Kids, all because of you.
My name is Catherine Wanjiru. I am the admin, Angel Center for Abandoned Children. Our founder is Wamaitha Mwangi. We currently have 64 children, 32 going to school, and among those 32, 2 are special children, and we are left at the home with 32. Now the toddlers and the infants. To the RUTO Foundation, thank you so much for remembering us. Guys, we lack words. We lack words. Amazing. We don't know what to say. Thank you for remembering us. You made a promise and you have delivered. And may God bless you. To my fellow Kenyans, as usual, cheza loto, sio ndoto. Angel Center tumeshinda loto.
Every time you play Lotto, 25% goes to the RUTO Foundation, which supports our fellow Kenyans through various causes. Thank you for your help. Together, we are changing lives.
Open University of Kenya, which was chartered on the 3rd of August 2023, aims to revolutionize higher education by breaking down barriers such as cost, previous exam grades, and geographical location through online open learning at the comfort of your home, job, etc., thus ensuring accessibility to education for all members of the society. In a nutshell, Open University of Kenya leverages technology to deliver education.
Open University has brought a new dawn in the Kenya education system, where learners are able to access education in a flexible, affordable, and all-inclusive.
Intakes ongoing for May and September. For more information, call us on 0202000211 or 0202000212 or email us at info@ouk.ac.ke. Open University of Kenya, an innovative university for inclusive prosperity.
Are you an SME looking for a media partner? Look no more, as Lookuptv got you covered for all your visibility and marketing needs. We at Lookuptv understand your business needs and want to work with you on your marketing journey, giving you solutions that will take you to the next level. Call us today on 0707 572 358 or send an email to sales@lookuptv.co.ke and kickstart this amazing journey. Welcome to Lookuptv, your official SME media partner.
If you want to have a proper outlook of the economy, then you have to speak to the wheels and gears of the integral businesses in the country.
And I want to be able to make the youths and everybody coming up in Kenya know that this is here locally.
Men and women in the thick of the burst of markets rising and falling, fighting to make their business decisions stick.
I've always lived in my career that I can never be late.
You need to train by yourself,
You need to practice by yourself. Then from there you can compose yourself and give kind of services like this.
On season 2 of The Captain's Arena, we seek the inside of the minds, predict the shift in the markets, get inspiration to start and make sense of it all.
Just watch what everybody else is doing and just make sure you're giving back to the society.
Oof. This is The Captain's Arena.
Well, a very good morning to you. Just in case you are joining us, you're just in time for the big conversation here on the Morning Drift on a day that the country is continuing to witness ravaging floods across the country. Of course, the situation in Mai Mahiu continues to unfold following the flash floods witnessed in that part of the country. That of course, is in Naivasha sub-county, Nakuru County, on Monday morning, where several people have lost their lives. As at now, we are told that at least 50 people have lost their lives owing to the flash floods that happened in Mai Mahiu, Naivasha, Nakuru County. Now, according to initial reports, the situation was caused by a dam that burst its banks, but like I said, we have now established that there was no dam in that particular area, and it was, a temporary water catchment area that had been, had formed a dam following the heavy rains that has been witnessed in the country. Now, that water catchment area formed in a gully in, the tunnel of an old railway, thus bursting its bank yesterday, leaving hundreds of people homeless and several still looking for their kins and aware of whether they are safe or not. Now that, of course, forms basis of our conversation this particular morning, as well as the decision by the Minister of Education to issue a press release on Monday at 1 a.m. in the morning in regards to the postponement of the reopening of schools. That as well questions of course, like people say, the competence of the CS in the Ministry of Education and why they had to do that or issue that press release 1 a.m. just a few hours before students across the country made their way to their various schools for the second term. Again, there's now the debate surrounding public servants being hired on contractual basis as opposed to the permanent and pensionable. We'll be looking at all that. And of course, this particular morning, I'm joined by Professor Fred Ogola. Very good morning to you, Prof.
Morning, my brother.
You're doing great?
Very well, yes.
Happy to see you.
But of course, you see, no one can do well and feel nice when the country is dysfunctional. I just was looking at it, how the day began normally. No, these things happen when you just wake up, you do your normal activities looking ordinary, then you just find that your house has been swept by flood. Can you imagine? You wake up with a plan. All these people had a plan of what to do. And you just wake up and find that what looked very normal is completely changed totally. Look at the kids who had to go to school. So I wouldn't say I'm fine, but you see, whenever anyone is affected,
yes,
we're all affected.
Well, we'll be, of course, talking about that, and it's indeed a very, very sad situation right there in Mai Mahiu, Naivasha, Nakuru County. As well, joining us this morning is Wakili Fanyamambo Kinuthia. Very good morning to you, Wakili.
A very good morning to you.
How do you, assess the situation as it is at the moment in the country?
I think this is the kind of situation that calls for every Kenyan, regardless of who they are and where they stand, first to do something small. In your own small way, if you can give a mattress to somebody, please do. If you can give a bed sheet, if you can give a packet of unga. And ironically, during the floods, what people need most is drinking water. That's what people forget. So if you can get some bottled water, you can see there's a lot of water, but the irony is that people are very thirsty. There's no clean drinking water. That's the most ironical thing. So anything that any person, any church, any organization, anywhere can be able to do first to help those who are suffering, let us do it. And also to visit the bereaved, to mourn with them, to help them bury their dead, even something as hard as, and it is hard, helping people try to find their bodies, because some of them are trapped in mud and all. So from wherever we are, let us do whatever we can to help whoever is in that bad situation, as we also try to think of what the government is doing, if they are doing anything.
Well, fair enough. Of course, as well, after, in a while, we'll be expecting Edward Githaiga to be joining us. But, Prof,
yes,
like Wakili puts it, it's a time where we need to come together as a country and, help those who've been really, really affected. But even as, Kenyans come together to help the victims of, these flash floods, especially the situation in Mai Mahiu, Naivasha, from where you sit, let's talk about the response of the government to this situation.
Yeah. You see, I've always said that, in fact, in my Solomonic economic book, I've written that Kenya needs a welfare state. Because idea, there's so much, there's an extent to which normal mwananchi can do. But a welfare state, I told you here last week that when I was doing my PhD in Barcelona, there was just an unusual snow that the train system could not move. And they just came to where we were studying and told us, stay put, we're going to give you dinner and give you a place to sleep. Can a government ever do that? So the Kenyans can do what they can do, and I call upon every Kenyan to do what they can do. But we have what is called a shrinking role of government, where we have a government that is doing less and less. With the time, they're doing less and less, collecting more and more, but doing less and less. Imagine they collect taxes from people. There was the disaster response fund. You had James Orengo speaking about it. Those 10 billion shillings which was given. Now there's even more in the budget which is given. Where is that money going? Who has received a single coin in terms of relief since the floods? The El Nino disaster response. We have an entire office in Nyayo House. A whole floor full of visas being paid with vehicles. Whom have they helped? We have Red Cross here. We have AMREF there, isn't it? We have so many NGOs there. If you see so many NGOs in a country, no, the government is doing nothing. If you go to Kibera, there's 720 NGOs working on one thing or two in Kibera, isn't it? If you go to Homa Bay, there's one working on HIV issues, isn't it? There are some working on malaria issues. There are so many NGOs, yet we have a government. You measure the failure rate of a government to the extent that the citizens depend on NGOs and themselves. You tell me what you could do if your house is swept. I remember my son came to me when we were watching TV and he saw those raving floods. He asked me, Daddy, if the floods come to our house here, what will we do? It made me ask myself a question. Whom do you call? Do you have a number you can call? Do you know where you can get help? Where our help come from? Kenya only asks God for help and each other. So according to me, the response has been very poor. So let me state the following. One, the president needs to address the nation on this matter urgently and give direction. The president seems to be always speaking only about what he wants to speak about. But now I want him to come and tell us that this is a national disaster, declare this thing a national disaster, and start seeking for help outside of Kenya. Because if Kenyans cannot help, if the Kenyan government cannot sufficiently help Kenyans out of this situation, the president needs to acknowledge it. He is not in charge of this flood. The flood actually is in charge of him. The country seems to be an autopilot. So we want them to come out clearly and pronounce themselves. Secondly, I also believe that we have meteorological department. They have information and data. Why are we running a country in a postmortem mode? This country needs to be run in a predictive mode where you can predict. I hear what CS was saying, I cancel this because of floods. But could you not foresee this one? Meteorological department has that information. Why are we not consuming that information, using it predictively to run a country, rather than running the country in a postmortem mode? So for me, if you ask me, we need to be more proactive, we need to be more predictive. Let us not be postmortem driven, okay. And let us give information, civic education about simply, like you could see, if you give me time, there's somebody who drowned trying to run after their mattress. Somebody drowned because they are trying to get a sufuria from water. You know, if you look at a plane, I think when there's a plane, they shall tell you that whenever the cabin pressure falls down, put on your mask first, even before helping somebody. They tell you, if never there's an emergency, escape, don't try even to carry your bag. So her citizens being told, when there's a flood, don't start looking for how to recover your property. No. Focus on your life, because your life is precious.
Fair enough.
Much as you can get.
Okay, fair enough.
So civic education is very poor. Our response is very slow and very unstrategic. And I think the government needs to do something more than that.
Fair enough. Wakili, coming to you now, even before we talk about the response and the money that has been set aside to help to cater for the effects or mitigate the effects of flooding, let's talk about the government in itself. By now, many people are have expected the president to have addressed the situation, to come out and address the situation officially, because this is an issue that has affected thousands, if not millions, across the country, and the death toll at the moment is around 160 in terms of people who've died from the floods. As the president really taken this matter seriously from where you sit?
I think to start, I usually worry deeply when I want to defend Kenya Kwanza on anything, because there's nothing we can say. On one of the days when people really died of floods, the helicopters in the country were available to carry ballot material for UDA elections. And they would pass over Mathare and see children on the rooftops of Mabati houses. I mean, how many hours can somebody stay on a rooftop? But election material for UDA elections was so important that right now we haven't seen any choppers being availed to help Kenyans. But we saw them being available for UDA elections. I don't know where those elections will take this country. Now 160 lives have been lost. Many of those elections were happening in primary schools. And the government would go there and they would find people who were living in those schools where some of these elections were happening. And then the Minister for Education wakes up at night when children have already started traveling to school. Some have just arrived and says they have postponed the opening dates. Even us who are not in government are aware, and we can see on the news every day, that so many schools have become rescue centers for people who are affected by floods. And then you wait until midnight on the day just preceding the time when people are supposed to go back to school, and then you say that you have stopped children from going to school. It's a government that is not thinking. Because what they should have done is, we had said a week before, you can foresee that this is not a good time to open schools. And I usually tell this government, I don't know whether it's the greed, they were thinking that money for school fees will come to that, was it the 222 number or something, that they had said fees will start coming. I think walikuwa wamefanya hesabu. They had done their calculation, they were like, and let us force them to open, whether they are flooding, whether they are dying, we don't care, let them open, because they'll come and put money in this common pay bill for the government, and there will be money. You can die but pay school fees. And then they realize that it's not working, so they cancelled last minute. But I think walikuwa wamepangia hiyo pesa sana, na walikuwa wameingoja sana. And that's why now they have a problem, because some of the children, I have a child in a national school. So some of the children who are in Kwale and they have to come to a place within Mount Kenya have to leave like a day or two before. So they had left. Now they are in between Kwale and Nanyuki, and then they have to go back to Kwale for another few days and then probably come back. So that's not the kind of response we expected from government. And then in any responsible country, by now there would be a number. You're being told, in case of a flood disaster, call this number. Let me ask you Kenyans, today if there's a flood, whom do you call? There used to be, at least in the US, there's a number. People know if you call 911 for emergencies, something can happen. Which number in this country is used for emergencies? Nothing. If you have an emergency, you're on your own. Call God or call the devil, or if you're a devil worshipper, or if you go to this sectarian, call on, there's nothing. How do Kenyans reach government? How do Kenyans call for help? Now, by now they would have set up a number and said, call this number. The other thing, people always think that sometimes government is just required to provide money. If today, for example, they had set up a center and said, if you have a packet of unga, or if you have a blanket, because every other person I know today has got an extra cloth, a shirt. Those people who are wiped away, they have nothing, literally. So even if you give them a shirt today, they would be happy. They would have said, go to any school near you or go to your local chief. Take a shirt there, take a t-shirt, take a blanket. Kenyans are willing. Kenyans are even willing to donate blood. But this government is where? In the next UDA election, I don't know.
Now, before we continue and talk even about matters, the statement released by the CS, which he talks about it being imprudent, and let me just read what the report says. It says reports received by the ministry, corroborated with data from other relevant government agencies, show that a number of schools in various regions of the country have been adversely affected by the rains. The devastating effects of the rains in some of the schools is so severe that it will be imprudent, and I'm picking on the term imprudent, to risk the lives of learners and staff before watertight measures are put in place. Now, he talks about it being imprudent to send students to school, but one would question, is it prudent to really issue a press release at 1 a.m. just 4 or 5 hours before students go back to school?
No. I'm telling you, the elections of that wheelbarrow party were done the week before. And they were done in these schools, and they know the state of these schools. I mean, government is not a stranger in town. The chiefs are telling them, in my area, this is happening. The DOs, the DCs are telling them what is happening in their areas. Government was well aware of how many schools had a problem. The problem is not postponing the date. They should have done it. The problem is, why do it at 1 a.m. on the day that the children are reporting the following morning? Because those who are from far-flung places, like now if you look at a school like Lenana here, it has children from all over the country. So if a child is expected on Monday and he's coming from Moyale, he starts leaving Moyale on Saturday. Only to arrive on Monday morning, amefika Lenana school, then they are being told, no, we are opening on the 6th. So what happens to that child? The parents has to look for another 4,000 for that child to travel back to Moyale, because haezi kaa Lenana school peke yake during that period. I hope you understand what I mean.
Yes.
So that child goes back to Moyale, takes him another 2 days. They arrive there probably on Wednesday morning. And they are planning to come back again on Saturday so that by Monday morning, the 6th, they are here. So it's about communication at the wrong time.
Okay, fair
This
enough.
should have been made like on Friday last week or Thursday. Kenyans should have been told, we have seen the situation. It is not practicable.
Fair enough.
Please, as parents, like I had said, my child is mine. Doesn't belong to the government, and they need to get that clearly. And I make my discretion. If I say my son is not going to school, you can't come and kill me. If you like now, look at Thika Road near Chania. You've seen what's happening. I have never seen Chania River full, and that's the road they are going to use. You as a parent, you use your discretion. Don't send your child to school if you're sending them to danger. It happened the other day when children were close in school and one child died at night when that bus had an accident. Do you know the sorrow was only home? Every other Kenyan has moved on with their life.
In fact,
so if you have a child and you're a parent, use your discretion. Look at where you live. Look at your roads. Look at the situation of where you are taking your child to school. And tell the government, I agree my child needs to go to school, but not dead. So if I'm passing them through a death channel, you saw that easy coach bus that was marooned by floods on its way to Kisumu. If that is the route that your child is going to use to school, and you have reason to feel that it is unsafe, even if it's supposed to be on the 6th, tell them to wait.
Now, fair enough. You see, it's the reason as to I'm saying, for the CS to say it's imprudent, you see, even if they're trying to mitigate and ensure that students are safe, the tragedy of the boat that capsized in Konapunda, in Garissa, headed to Tana River, a good number of those, the casualties were students and teachers who were going to school. They were reporting to school. Now, Prof, does the issuance of that press release at 1 a.m. demonstrate the incompetence within government?
I would not even say the incompetence of government. The structure of Kenya Kwanza government cannot deliver. Look at what's happening here. You have the president, then you have the prime CS, then you have deputy president, then you have the CSS, then you have the PSS, isn't it? Then you have those undersecretary. Before the information reaches the decision maker, I remember that I told you that all the CS in government of Kenya were selectively selected to be unqualified so they don't do their work. It is by design. The president does not want any effective person working. Because if you look at Machogu, seriously, even if you look at his explanation here, Doesn't make sense. You compare Machogu with the former Uhuru's CS, Magoha. So look at Machogu and Magoha. Can Machogu fit the shoes of Magoha? You go to the ones of the public service, isn't it? You find Moses Kuria here. You compare with the previous one. You go to foreign affairs. You don't match these people. Kenya has gone back instead of going forward. Education is improving. People are getting more educated. Isn't it? People are getting more qualified. Why is the cabinet not getting more qualified with time? I could understand that Kenyatta's cabinet would have not been as qualified as that of Uhuru. But if you look at now, Ruto's cabinet being less qualified than Kenyatta's cabinet, yet Kenyatta ruled this country more than 60 years ago. We have gone back like 70 years back. So according to me, the structure of government does not allow, and I've been to explain to people here, the president normally issued an executive order. Executive order issued by the president is implemented in terms of policy by the ministers. Ministers should now go to the state corporation, which is state department headed by the PSS, to come with an execution framework. But here, informations were gathered on the ground. The CS, I can tell you, have information, had known that it was going to be difficult to open the schools. But he was still waiting for the president to give him his word. That's why even he went to those areas of Eldoret thinking he was going to meet the president. The president was busy with other things about the UDA election. Secondly, the president was busy with what I would call the political bets. Then again, the conference taking place in the
IDA, yes.
He was very busy with those things. So getting the audience, the president, to make the decision, because it seems that every single decision the president has to make. And this is what is crippling. And that's why I see many cabinet ministers for Ruto, you cannot know them. You only know them when there's a crisis. But when there's no crisis, you can't know them because the person making decisions is the president. So according to me, the structure of the government is the problem. You always need a structure which is malleable, a structure that can be able to make quick decisions with not too many hierarchies. I know what's happening. I know very well that if Machogu made the decision without consulting the president directly, he could have been having trouble.
Fair enough.
And according to me, the issue is the president needs to allow ministers to be ministers. He needs to be a president. He needs the PS to be a PS. So there should be decision. This decision can be made by a PS, not even by the minister.
No.
This one can be made by the president only.
No.
There are serious decisions that must be made by the president, not things like transport and among other things.
Fair enough. Now joining us is Mr. Edward Githaiga. Very good morning to you, sir. Now, talking about far, the decision by CS Machogu, to issue a press release at 1 a.m. Just a few hours before schools were reopened seems to be far-fetched. From where you sit, I mean, it's unfair to parents to issue a press release at that time of the the night, just 4 or 5 hours before students go back to school. I mean, before you came, Wakili was talking about students probably learning in Nairobi and coming from Moyale, Marsabit, Tana River, who have to be here, start the journey 2 days before the opening date, meaning they came to probably to Nairobi or to whatever part they're going 2 days before the press release was issued. Yes. Now, is it not, is it really fair to parents to issue such a press release at 1 a.m. on Monday morning?
Thank you very much once again for hosting me. It's always a great pleasure to be here. I would like first to start by saying, indeed, nobody called for the floods. And as the floods have happened, they have happened, And if I remember very well, a communique that came out from the Ministry of Education, that was on Thursday, there was the issue of getting a full report, a feasibility report on the school situation. Because, we're not talking about the roads or the marketplaces, we're talking about the schools. But however,
now when children are watching TV and you see the way things are being carried away, the government has been very firm by telling people, like I saw the deputy president the other day telling people, don't risk your life. However, why put the lives of our children in danger for them to put them in those buses, to put them in the same public transport where the roads are, being damaged by the floods? But nonetheless, I don't think that should be looked as a systemic issue in government. As my colleague professor has tried to allude that Kenya Kwanza government cannot govern. I mean, that is misnomer. That is a big lie and propaganda selling to Kenyans. But you know, in the end of the day, let me finish. Wait, I've just started my show.
I can't take that. You see, let's be honest.
Okay,
just rebuttal is allowed.
I left you speak.
Rebuttal is allowed.
Okay.
No, but I haven't finished. You cannot rebuttal.
Just a minute, and then you respond.
We are not doing a sermon that we cannot ask.
Just a minute.
You have your time to speak, Prof.
Just a minute.
Let's have order.
Okay, just a minute, and then you will respond. Just a minute.
Yeah. So, you see, there is no point of wasting somebody's airtime. He had his moment to speak, and I had.
No, you have been given time.
And obviously, when you say Kenya Kwanza government cannot govern, that is hogwash. Because in the end of the day, the floods, nobody called for the floods to come to Kenya. The floods is a natural disaster. Listen, they have happened in Dubai. They have happened in London. They are happening everywhere else in the world. It's not just Kenya. Why are you saying because the floods? Is it Kenya Kwanza government that?
Okay, Mr. Githaiga, nobody called for the floods, right?
Yes.
But there was prior warning from the Met Department.
That's what I'm telling you, brother. Prior warning. Do you know, if I ask you right now, because you seem like to have a lot of information, how many millimeters have we received in the last 2 days?
Question is...
I'm asking you.
No, question is,
you seem to be more informed.
Was there prior warning or not?
No, we've had... The prior warning was... Listen, let me explain. The prior warning was for 30 to 40 millimeters rainfall. Do you know what is the rainfall now? 188.
No.
118.
No.
Yes.
That's true. In fact, the expected rainfall is up to 125 millimeters.
Exactly.
Yes.
No, at that time, no. Listen.
No, that's factual.
Listen.
That was information
You're saying current weather forecast expectation.
That was issued
but
yesterday.
When in February,
that was issued
wait, let me ask you a question. Which alert is that you're raising? Which one? For which month?
It was issued yesterday.
No, I'm saying not the one for yesterday. I'm saying the one that the government was told by the meteorological. They had predicted 40 millimeters rainfall. The rainfall now is 100 and over. So that is 3 times more than the government had planned.
I'll come back to you again. On the 25th of April, 2024.
Yes.
The Met Department issued another alert.
Yes.
Warning of even heavier rainfall. Why did the government have to wait until Monday morning to issue a press release that reopening of schools has been postponed?
That is what I'm saying. That's an individual minister should take his responsibility. Listen to me, brother. That individual minister, Mashogu, should take his responsibility and give a conference to explain to Kenyans. Because, like I said, I'm not supporting that. I actually
1 minute.
I actually said as a parent, today I just met a parent who had to pay double bus fare for the child to come back to Nairobi.
Fair enough.
You understand?
Who does CS Machogu represent? He's appointed by the president. He represents the president.
Yes.
Fair enough. Just a minute, Prof.
You know, we should not be emotional about this matter.
Oh my God! There we go. Why are you always using a mama?
You had your time.
No,
you had your time.
No,
you
but
had your time.
Why does he
You had your time.
psychology?
Githaiga, you had your time. I defended you. I defended you.
I'm saying we, me, you, and everybody, even the Kenyans. I'm an economist. We believe that in God, we trust God, isn't it? The rest must bring data. So only God we can question. I'm a Catholic. I go to church. They tell me Virgin Mary was virgin after giving birth to Jesus Christ, and I don't question. Can you imagine that I believe that? But if I meet a woman who's telling me that I'm a virgin, I'll tell her, can we see a doctor? Because I can't believe another woman. I can only believe Mary, the mother of Jesus. So I gave evidence. We have fake thing after the other. We are not talking about one issue of floods. We began with the issue of even reviewing the curriculum CBC. It is not working. Presidential Working Party never worked. We have that on record. We have G2G oil. It's not. We have many cases of things not working. We had money issued for disaster response. We have an office in Nyayo House appointed. Have you heard they are working? And I gave example, my brother. When you see many people setting up WhatsApp group to help themselves, it means they have no government. I talked about the shrinking role of state. Shrinking role of the state whereby You go to the supermarket, you're on your own. You go to the fuel station, you're on your own. The flood comes in, you're on your own. When rainfall fails, you're on your own. They give you fake fertilizer, still functioning government. Minister of Agriculture gave us fake fertilizer. We have conmen selling to people marbles and I don't know, somebody's, some animals' shit, giving farmers after farmers have paid. We are still talking about a government that is functioning. A government that cannot sell fertilizer, cannot give us right oil. We have a government that cannot salvage our life when floods come in. We have a government that calls a press conference at 1 a.m. as if everybody is awake like them, isn't it? And telling people, now, how do you know that some people don't have television? How many people have radios? How do you know by the time you are reaching at 1 o'clock? I can tell that's a clueless government, rudderless government. And the fact I'm talking about is that this government was not supposed to be trusted with the leadership. I'm talking about it. The qualification from top down was not right. And I talked about this thing during the manifesto, which I say that let us not just look at manifesto in terms of paper, let us look at the team playing. And let me just give an example so that my brother thinks I'm very objective. If you are a coach and you come up with a strategy on how football will be played, isn't it? You can write on paper, isn't it? You say, let us play high balls, let us just stay on their half, isn't it? Do you have a player who will hold the ball up there? If the player is ineffective to hold the ball up there, your strategy is wrong. So what I'm trying to say here is that, my brother Githaiga, you are a Kenyan like me. Let's love our country. The only way to love our country, let's tell people the truth. According to me, there's a serious issue about qualification here from top down. Even when you heard the president saying, I said that just yesterday, he said that we are going to have vehicles without engines, that you just charge and it goes. When a president says there's be a vehicle without an engine,
no.
You know, I'm asking my brother, if you have a head of state who says that there will be a vehicle without an engine, now, how do you sit at home peacefully that you have a head of state?
Wakili, kindly.
My goodness.
I think I have... You know, they used to say Kenya needs prayers. Now I know it's the government that needs prayers. And people really need to pray for this government. Because right now, Githaiga has told us passionately how the government was told that they're expecting 40 millimeter, and then we got 188. It is more than what they were told. What plans did they make for the 40 millimeter rainfall? Other than using our helicopters to carry UDA ballot material. Na zilikuwa zinapita Mathare, I have told you, there's a child on a roof, a hot iron sheet roof, and there's water all over. How long can that child stay on that roof? 3 hours maybe? And the helicopters are delivering ballot materials on such a day. An insensitive, completely clueless government. How do you hold party elections when people are dying and they are being held in primary schools where people are hosted? You know, I saw these party elections going on, and the chief is worried between, am I helping in these rubbish party elections, or am I helping these people who have a disaster? Because they've both come to the present primary school. And that is the government you're talking about. CS Kindiki is threatening Kenyans and telling them that if you are found crossing flooded places, you'll be sued for attempted suicide. What does he want people to do? If I live on Thika Road and Thika Road has turned into a river, instead of this, I don't know, kind of government unblocking Thika Road, they are telling you that if you are found driving on flooded places, they are going to sue you for attempted suicide. That's what he's telling Kenyans. And the road, the superhighway has become a river. So I'm driving on a superhighway that has become a river. So you will sue me for driving on a superhighway, charging me for using, and sue me for attempted suicide. That is how government is reacting to floods. Let me tell you, when we had a government, there was the biggest pandemic in the world called Corona. And that government provided leadership, because the first thing we saw first, the president came and led from the front and said, we have a pandemic, we have a problem, and we are going to attack it as a nation. That's the first thing, an element of leadership. He called up people and State House and addressed Kenyans. Number two, he made sure that the minister in charge was giving a press briefing every day at around 2 p.m. just telling Kenyans, this is where we are, this is what is going on, this is what government is doing. And they even gave numbers that in case you see an emergency of corona type, call this number. Now we have a government that doesn't address us, that has not created a coordinated approach. We used to know that COVID supplies are happening from this place. We used to know that COVID coordination is happening from this place. Even the small kids who didn't know Mutahi Kagwe walikuwa wanasema, Daddy ndio yule mtu wa corona amekuja. But at least there was an association of the pandemic with someone who was providing direction. Right now, the minister wakes up at 1 a.m. to tell us not to go to school. The other one decides that UDA elections are more important. The other one, so we don't have a coordinated approach. No. And also, as this is going on, look at where the priorities of the government are right now. When the floods had started sweeping parts of the country, the leader of majority was proposing we buy a presidential jet. There's absolutely no money for teachers, there's no money for doctors, there's no money for floods, but there is a man who thinks he's okay and he's normal telling Kenyans we need to buy a presidential jet. And he's fine, and he's the leader of majority, and he's telling Kenyans what Kenya needs. Tumeangalia, tumeona shida yenyu ni presidential jet. Do you know how much money those things cost? Look at the presidential fleet. You know there are things you can't hide. Ni kama mimba. Look at the new additions. Look at the Lexuses that have been brought there. Just go as a Kenyan and research how much is that new Lexus. Na hakuna pesa ya floods mitigation. And then somebody tells you we have a government. That the presidential fleet, you know, those cars, Kenyans have been looking at what was being used by the president. And they were wondering, wow, if I got that, that's the best car in the country. Now they have brought new ones for millions of shillings. And there's no money to remove a child standing on a roof of a Mabati house in Kibra.
No, fair enough.
It's nonsense.
Fair enough. Mr. Githaiga, before I come to you, is the press, the advisory that was issued by the Met Department on the 25th of April, 2024. And they say the validity of the advisory was between 1 p.m. on the 25th to the 28th of April at 6 p.m., which was on Sunday, 6 p.m. And they say heavy rainfall of more than 40 millimeters is expected to pound in 24 hours in several parts of Lake Victoria, the Rift Valley, Highlands West and east of the Rift Valley, including Nairobi area. Of course, they've mentioned several parts. They've mentioned up to around over 20 counties. They say the instructions are, residents in all the mentioned areas are advised to be on the lookout for potential floods, flash floods, and poor visibility. The water levels in rivers, lakes, and dams are expected to remain high. They've mentioned a lot of things. Now, the message has been addressed to the presidency, the CSs for environment, education, and everybody else in that sector. Now, how do you tell me the CS probably was awaiting more data and all that, despite getting this particular information advisory from the Met Department, the department that is dealing with the issue of rains as we amid the flooding situation? How would you even defend that, Mr. Githaiga, really?
You know, in the end of the day, I would like to say this is a natural disaster. You know, I mean, let's not think that it's just a normal rain. We expected long normal rains in Kenya. We didn't expect flash floods. We didn't expect the 125 millimeters of rain in Kenya. We didn't. Same as Dubai. Dubai didn't expect that, but Dubai flooded. And do you see Dubai complaining? Kenyans are just complainers. These two people are professional complainers, professor of complaining, and his brother here. That is what they keep on doing. I'm telling you, they will never. Let me speak, please. You know, okay, honestly, okay. You guys. You let him speak. This show, even you keep on interrupting me. You're not allowing me. You're not allowing me to express myself. You're allowing me 10 minutes.
Wait, Prof. Listen to Mr. Githaiga. I'm defending you. I've defended you before when the Prof was interrupting you. I just
but you give somebody a chance. Even you become my opposition.
How?
You're opposing me.
I'm just
you're
stating
opposing
the facts.
me. I'm speaking. You're interrupting.
Because if you're not giving us facts, Mr. Githaiga,
so are they your facts or my facts?
You have your
You have your show. You're being biased.
Fair enough.
You have your show.
Mr. Githaiga, listen.
It should be a balanced show.
Mr. Githaiga.
This should be a balanced show.
Okay, Mr. Githaiga,
He
let me
cannot
ask you.
tell me I'm not giving facts and he's the moderator.
Mr. Githaiga,
come
the
on,
statement
man.
I've read, the
Come
adversary
on, this
is
has
not...
become an opposition station.
Okay,
man.
listen,
You people have
listen,
become
Mr. Githaiga.
opposition. There's nothing
Mr. Githaiga,
anything I will ever say
Mr.
on this
Githaiga,
show that will be
Mr. Githaiga,
acceptable.
Mr. Githaiga,
It will never be acceptable.
Mr. Githaiga, listen. The adversary I've read to you,
and I was responding to that.
Is not my adversary.
But I was
it's
look
an
at
adversary
how much time we
department.
Just because of you not allowing me to speak.
You see, when you cannot really underscore, Mr. Githaiga, the situation in the country.
Honestly, sasa mtafute tu mtu mwingine.
Listen, no, Mr. Githaiga, it's factual. It's factual. It's factual, Mr. Githaiga. 160 people have lost their lives. You cannot underestimate that.
Why am I coming to this show if I'm not given an opportunity to speak my mind? I have, this guy is opposition, him is opposition, now you've joined him. So basically, let me just keep quiet.
Now,
let the show continue with the two people.
Now,
because I won't speak again.
I'd term that as not being factual. No. But at this moment in time, let's just listen to what the president had to say in regards to the flooding situation in the country. Mr. Githaiga, listen. Mr. Githaiga.
Food supply. The floods that are ravaging our country, we have close to 10,000 people displaced in Nairobi. We have already a robust program led by none other than my deputy, who could not even attend this meeting because he is focused on making sure that we deal with those who are affected. We have mudslides that are affecting Kenya. In fact, there is an ongoing exercise, as I talk to you, by the whole of government to make sure that those affected by the mudslides are taken care of. And tomorrow morning, we are having a cabinet meeting to be able to discuss on additional measures that my government is going to take to make sure that citizens who are victims of climate change, who today are suffering floods, they are suffering mudslides, are looked after. It is a realization that while we had a drought a year ago, today we have floods. A year ago, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Mozambique were having floods. Today, they are having drought. That is the reality, that is the new normal, as I said, of our situation, and we have to continuously work at it.
Excuse
me. We have already established a 24-hour disaster center. We are monitoring the situation. Our take and that from experts show that these rains will taper and that we will see a lesser intensity of rain. But that is not to say that we are less prepared or we are letting down our guard. We will continuously be monitoring the situation so that we can take care of any emergencies. Already, we have sent out messages to citizens who live in precarious situations, and we are using our provincial administration to even move citizens away from those areas, even if they don't want to move, because we want to look out for their.
Well, that was President William Ruto yesterday after the IDEA conference at KCC. And I just want to begin with you, Mr. Wakili Fanyamambo. Now, the president is talking about, having to now sit with the cabinet today to assess the situation and see what the government can do. Is it a question of, too little, too late?
I would advise the president not to sit with his cabinet. They will not advise him. Apart from Professor Kithiki Kindure, then his cabinet, he has told us himself in State House, is inept. Parliament told him the people you have chosen to cabinet will not help you. The Minister of Health is unable to run her docket. She has no idea what's going on. Kenyans are still struggling to remember who is the Cabinet Secretary for Environment. People have not seen Kipchumba Murkomen deliver on transport. Right now, transport has been affected. We are yet to see something proactive from his end. If he sits with that cabinet, he will come up with something that reflects the thinking of that cabinet. It will not help him. If I was president, RUTO right now, I would have sat down and asked, from meteorological department, send us your best. Red Cross, send us your best. People, from example, who are in environmental, the professors who are teaching environment, come send us your best. Then try to look within the villages who understands the response to disaster, hata kama ni kienyeji in whatever way. Look for people who are experts in their own right in somehow. And it doesn't mean experts by way of education. You can have somebody who's been an ambulance driver in this city for the last 20 years. That person can bring you a lot of insights into disaster management. You can start saying, as a president, I want to be brought people who are good at something that is related to disaster management. You can have people within the army who've been to places where we have wreckages and they know how to remove bodies safely, or people who are trapped and so on and so forth. Then try to convene that kind of meeting. You know, just call and say, I want the best, who can plug in one way or another. Then in terms of communication, who are the best? Who are the best people in terms of communication? Not Isaac Mwaura. How do we then sit in State House and say that I have had a collection of the best in environment, in rain, in disaster, in driving ambulances, in excavating bodies, in even communication to Kenyans about this issue? I have had the meeting of the best brains in the country. And don't get me wrong, Kenyans, because you think best brains is in terms of education. I can tell you there's somebody who's taught for 30 years. And that person has an understanding. He's been a principal here. And he can come and bring an idea that would help us deal with the education crisis during these floods. So the president needs to convene a meeting of useful brains, but not his cabinet. What he will get from his cabinet is what we've been seeing for the last 2 years, incompetence. He'll have a meeting and he'll be there in State House talking to people who are not adding value to the conversation, and then after that they are going to give him very funny ideas that are not going to help this country. This is the time to call somebody like Mutahi Kagwe. Tell him, you know what? Under your docket we had the worst health crisis in this country. Please come. We need you in the health sector. Yeah? And we start thinking, where do we have what brain? And what can that brain do for this country, regardless of whether that person is in opposition? I remember there's a time when Nkaiseri was in ODM, the late Nkaiseri, may he rest in peace, and there was need to have a minister for internal affairs. And the president then did not care that Nkaiseri was in ODM. He said, this man is capable of running this docket, and he's a Kenyan. This is a duty to the country. Come here. Forget everything. Forget your opposition role. You're not now being called to serve government. You are being called to serve Kenya. And Kaiseri came and said, I was a general and I am a Kenyan before I'm an opposition MP. And he served very well during his tenure as Minister for Internal. So I would like to say this is the time for the president to start making such decisions. Yeah. That I don't care where you are and what your political affiliation is. If you are competent and capable to help us during this disaster, we will call you and say, now this is a duty to the country. It's not a duty to UDA, to Kenya Kwanza. It's a duty to the country. And let that person come and serve, knowing that they are serving their nation.
Well, coming to you, Prof. Earlier on, Wakili talked about, matters, financing and ensuring that funds are released to help, those affected by floods. The DP announced on Sunday that the government, set aside 1 billion. For mitigating the effects of floods and helping those who've been affected. But up to yesterday, according whatever this government spokesperson Isaac Mwaura said is anything to go by, the money had not actually been disbursed for that particular purpose, because according to him there are particular processes that needs to be done before the funds are released. Now, does that again point out at the issue of preparedness? Because if we had prepared as a country for such a crisis, and then everything would be set, including, funds ready to be disbursed in case such a situation happens.
Yeah. If you look at execution, because this is where I'm an expert in execution, I'm an expert on operation strategy. They say that we have what's called 40-20-40 rule. That to succeed on anything, 40% of your time and resources should be spent on preparation. 20% of your time and resources should be spent in the execution. 40% should be the rest will be spent on the follow-up, isn't it, and monitor and evaluation, so that you know what if something again happens next time, what can you do better? My brother, how many floods have we had in Kenya since independence? So if we never spend the 40% in just trying to see what did we get wrong, maybe we got it wrong in terms of information. We didn't consume information from meteorological department. We lack coordination. Resources were not disbursed on time. How can we improve the resource disbursement? You know, these things for resource disbursement, I saw James Orengo shouting on top of his voice. They just want money. You see, last time they said that 10 billion was sent to the counties, isn't it? Gachagua said he sent 10 billion. Governor said the money was not sent. In the end, we don't know whether the money was sent or not, because they don't send them to you, so you don't know. How can we have such a kind of a system? It happened during the El Nino. What we are having, I don't know, it's called floods, or this is still El Nino. So we do not know whether this is the El Nino, but money was disbursed before El Nino came. Then they say El Nino did not come, but the money was disbursed or was not disbursed. So you could see that this government lacks what's called accountability. You know, when you talk about the issue of accountability, accountability must be transparency, must be given to Kenyans. How do Kenyans know the money has been disbursed? Because someone says the government set aside. Setting aside ni kutenga. Serious, that's the word that RUTO uses most, kutenga. So kutenga is not actually issuing money. So how do we know? Is there an account we know? We say that money has come from Europe to be taken to a project in Kenya, but we don't know whether that money came. Europe and some of it did not come. So how much are we going to get? So I'm thinking about the issue that Kenya need to be given a way to really know money has been disbursed. What is the best way to have transparency? But also something which is very critical here is that in as much as we want to ignore this factor, according to me, the solution in the issue of managing floods in the best way possible, you see that citizens need now to know they are on their own. By knowing they are on their own, they need to be organized in a way that some money do not have to be given always in terms of levies and taxes to the city, to the county governments and local authorities and to the national government. Citizens need to organize themselves into, let's say, organized groups, because some of the issues we had there was like, for example, the place is flooding because just some leaves blocked some hole, of which if citizens can just go and use some money using kazi kwa vijana, giving some young people work, isn't it? Someone can just go with just a small kind of a metal, prick those things and water moves, because what is happening is that water paths have been blocked, therefore water is going to the people. That's the main thing. And factually, there's a very interesting incident I was discussing with Bishop Anyolo, the Archbishop of Nairobi, whereby a young man was telling us in that side of Huruma that hii si mafuriko, that this is not mafuriko, mafuriko ni sisi. So I asked him, what do you mean mafuriko ni sisi? He said, we have been told, these people who build houses, because those do not belong to the poor people. The rich people have invested in building these mabati houses in water paths to make money. And because these people have been put on the water path, they are the mafuriko. So water is trying to pass on the usual path, and they are being blocked by the people. So the problem we have in Nairobi is city planning and urban policy. The issue when we have land grabbers ruling a country, people who grab land, can we adhere to the land management policy whereby water paths, riparian areas are left to be riparian areas without interfering with them? Because if you block water, water will come for you. So we have put our own people on the path of water, so when water sweeps them, we are coming to help them. Helping to help them how? Yet we are the people who build those houses. Do you know that as we are crying, some people are dying, the investors are crying they're losing revenue? So according to me, why don't we allow, there's enough land in Kenya. Kenya is 583 acres, square kilometers. Why don't we find people settle in areas which are safe areas? We cannot be waiting for postmortem whereby water is sweeping you. I know where you are living, water will sweep you. But I build for you a house there so that water can sweep you. Now according to me, this for me is more long term. And the last point I have, so the last point I have here is that we really need coordination between the county government, the national government, and the issues of sub-county governments and the ward level, because the coordination is not there. Sometimes you find that what the ward MCA is saying is not the same as what the MP is saying, not the same thing governor is saying, it's the same thing the minister is saying, not the same thing the president is saying. If we lack coordination, then we are easy and prone to attack, and we do not have a way to respond to any problem, because the structures of government should be a responsive structure.
Fair enough.
Not a heavy structure.
Fair enough, Prof.
Yeah.
Now, just so you know, Edward Githega left citing, unfairness, but we appreciate him for his presence here this particular morning, but objectivity remains our priority, and ensuring that Kenyans are informed. We cannot, of course, underestimate the effects of the flash floods and the flooding situation across the country, because up to now 160 people have lost their lives to the flooding menace, and the government talks about putting measures in place to ensure that each and every Kenyan who is affected by the floods is gets help. Now, a lot of things are at stake, but coming to you, Akili, Prof is talking about people moving to areas where probably then they might not be affected. Now, the government talks about if you're in, flood-prone areas, you need to move to safer grounds. Now, where should these people move? And I'd pose the question to you: who bears the most responsibility? Because you also talked about infrastructure. Let's talk, for example, about the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. We've had the issue of its roofs leaking. There have been flooding situations, especially on Sunday night after the heavy rains at the JKIA. Now, who bears the most responsibility? The issue of JKIA has been there for a while now, but according to the CS for Transport, he says the issue has been there for a while, but he says the main thing at the moment is not only ensuring that it is fully repaired, but also constructing a new terminal to solve the crisis. Is that the way out for to solve the mess, for example, at JKIA?
Thank you very much. I keep telling people, for those who've traveled, some of the airports you go to around the world, and Prophet bear me witness, are very old. Some of the airports are 50, 60, 70 years old, but they are functional. Some of the train stations, especially in Europe, are very, 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 very old. But those train stations work. Kenya has a situation where if one mabati is leaking, you start saying you need to build a new terminal. What's wrong with that terminal? What's wrong with that terminal? Some of the airports you go to around the world are very, 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 very old. And Kenyans, for those who've not had the benefit to travel, I can tell you some of these airports are very old. But they function. They function because there's leadership. There's a time we had a national blackout and they fired Mr. Gitari, who was in charge of Kenya Airports Authority, for what was an electricity issue, not even an airport management issue. I think right now there's nobody to be fired. They have a problem in the sense that now they've looked, there's nobody to fire at the airport. So now you start asking and saying that you need to build a new terminal. We don't need a new terminal in the country right now when people do not have even money to be able to pay fees. I think what we need to do is to repair what is existing and to make sure that the works done meet the standards that are there. Because if you do something and it meets the standards, then you don't have to keep worrying about having to build new terminals. Now, having said that, I'd like to say that, you see me, Fanyamambo Kinuthia, if today Kenya started a plant for a nuclear generation plant, or Kenya started a space exploration mission, and you made me the Minister for Space Exploration in Kenya, what do you expect? Nothing will happen. I have no idea how space exploration happens. I have no idea about nuclear science. I have no idea about how jets are fired and so on and so forth. This is the situation we are having in this country. Urban planning is a critical thing. I keep saying urban planning, so ile degree na someone kimuchezo. You know, when we were in campus, we used to joke with Bachelor of Arts because we used to think it was a simple thing. And by then I have a lot of respect for it. We used to call it Baba Alinileta, Bachelor of anything. But it's a respectable degree. Now, urban planning is one of those degrees that takes a lot of time. It's not easy. Now the chairpersons in charge of urban planning are the county assembly. Go check who is the MCA in charge of urban planning in Nairobi and what is their qualification.
Okay.
And in Nakuru and in Kisumu and wherever. And that's when you start realizing, you Kenyans, when you are told that it's good for an MCA to have a degree, you thought it's bad because we are just trying to be elitist. But I can tell you some of the challenges we are having is because the person we put there, we put him to discuss nuclear science. And this person has no idea what nuclear science is. If I was appointed minister in charge of helping Kenyans fly to the space, I would say I'm not qualified.
Thank you very much, Wakili. At this particular time, I just want us to take a break before we come back and talk about, there's the sort of political tension between the deputy president here in Nairobi and the county chief, Arthur Johnson Sakaja, as well as the issue of having public servants on contractual basis as opposed to permanent and pensionable. But that is immediately after this short break.
Tuko hapa Kaptara, tunataka kusema asante sana RUTO Foundation kwa mambo mazuri ambayo wameweza kutufanyia leo. Wakaaji wa hapa Kaptara, wakaaji wa hapa Salawa, wakaaji wa hapa Mujukuo, mpaka wakaaji wote ambao wanatoka hapa Baringo County.
Naambia RUTO Foundation asante kwa kazi nzuri wanayofanya. Mungu awabariki.
Every time you play Lotto, 25% goes to the RUTO Foundation, which supports our fellow Kenyans through various causes. Thank you for your help. Together, we are changing lives.
The University of Nairobi is a distinguished institution of higher learning dedicated to nurturing your intellectual curiosity and pushing the boundaries of knowledge. From state-of-the-art laboratories to modern libraries equipped with the latest resources, we provide you with the tools you need to succeed. Choose from a wide range of programs designed to prepare you for challenges of tomorrow's world. Whether in STEM, humanities, business, or the arts, our strong industry connections and career service support will help you translate your education into meaningful career opportunities upon graduation. Join a vibrant community of scholars from around the world, fostering cultural exchange, collaboration, and lifelong friendships. Book your space now for September intakes. Log in to https://www.uonbi.ac.ke for a wide range of courses to choose from. You can also contact +254 020 491 0000 or email us at pr@ounbi.ac.ke. Are you a junior secondary school, a college, a TVET institution, or a university, and you want to advertise your intake? Book now and advertise with us today on both Lookuptv and all our digital platforms. Call us today or email us on sales@lookuptv.co.ke.
If you want to have a proper outlook of the economy, then you have to speak to the walls and gears of the integral businesses in the country.
And I want to be able to make the youths and everybody coming up in Kenya know that this is here locally.
Men and women in the thick of the bust of markets rising and falling, fighting to make their business decisions stick.
I've always lived in my career that I can never be late.
You need to train by yourself. You need to practice by yourself. Then from there you can compose yourself and give kind of services like this.
On season 2 of the Captain's Arena, we seek the inside of the minds, predict the shift in the markets, get inspiration to start and make sense of it all.
Just watch what everybody else is doing and just make sure you're giving back to the society.
Oof. This is the Captain Zabana.
Well, thank you very much for staying with us. We continue with the conversation now. And gentlemen, there's been some sort of, disconnect, I'd say, because within the ruling coalition, because here in Nairobi, there have been, some sort of push and pull. Last week, if I'm not wrong, the deputy president talked about the president and himself paying keen attention on whatever is happening in Nairobi, and he said the political developments in Nairobi. Now, during the UDA elections that were, happened last week here in Nairobi, there was word that Sakaja Johnson, the governor, said himself he's going for the chairmanship of, the UDA in Nairobi region, and certain quarters said the deputy president was fronting Embakasi North MP James Gakuya, and he was accompanying the president on the day, the deputy president rather, on the day that he said the president and himself will pay key attention to whatever is happening in Nairobi. Now, up to now, as at now, Prof, how do you assess the relation between the DP and the governor? Because even the governor says he has no problem with the DP. The DP joined politics after him, but he has utmost respect for the deputy president. Now, are we yet again witnessing or for looking at a situation where there's likely to be some sort of political tension in the capital city?
I've always said that Nairobi is where we have got it wrong in the position of governor from the beginning. Kidero was looking promising in terms of qualification, but then Kidero was lacking character. Because you see, we don't just look at qualification only, character is really important. And then of course we got Sonko, who was lacking both character and qualification. Now we also have Sakaja, who both lacks character and qualification. Now, Gakuyo, if in case that was a succession plan to look for how to replace, for example, Sakaja in 2027.
No, that was maybe.
Yes, because let me tell you, that position of being chair of UDA Nairobi is not just a position. What role does Gakuyo want to chair UDA for? It's showing that I'm the leader of UDA in Nairobi, and therefore I could be the most suited person to become governor. And I'm sure that if that is what we are trying to do, it's okay. But I'm just happy that this time I want to speak to my brother Igade. You warned us through and through, and I hope that you won't give up to come back in 2027. But at the same time, I know there's a very able candidate in the name of Tim Wanyonyi. I would support him. I also know very well that even Babu Owino is interested. So the race for 2027 is so hot that UDA has to prepare early. That's the issue. And UDA must have assessed and discovered that Sakaja will not be the ticket to go there. It will be a very tall order for him. He's messed up in everything. We talked about last week of the issue of paying 10 billion shillings to lawyers. Can you imagine what 10 billion shillings could have done to these ravaging floods in Nairobi? It could do marvelous things. It could clean up all the issues we talk about. Now I saw him the other day distributing money to people who are stranded after the late issuance of travel advisory on the issue of going back to school. If you are a leader, a governor, will that be a work of a governor going to dish out handouts? Is that an effective way to reach out to everybody? As far as I'm concerned, we know all schools in Nairobi. We know the teachers. We know the head teachers. We know the parents. We have lists of pupils. If you wanted to support them, you could wire this money to schools in a well-coordinated manner rather than PR of giving 4 children or so money on the streets, then covering photos and putting on social media. These are leaders who should never ever been in this country. So as far as concerned, UDA has been disappointed with him. Remember that Sakaja won Nairobi not because he was a UDA candidate. Sakaja won because the mistake azimio made in their candidature. Because azimio must have given he got the ticket, but he had not been on the ground for long enough like Tim Wanyonyi was. Had Tim Wanyonyi been given the ticket, he could have actually become the governor of Nairobi. And they knew that it was the mistake that Azimio did in 2022 might not happen in 2027. And therefore they know very well, so they are preparing to take up Nairobi. But I'm sure that their choice of Gakuyo is really questionable, because again, that might be jumping from the frying pan to fire. But nevertheless, you have to understand that the deputy president, as people say, I believe so strongly, the deputy president also has a problem himself. So even his disagreement with Sakaja is not an issue, because Mudavadi would be seen as the main candidate. I know RUTO has got a default running mate in Gachagua, but you know, Gachagua cannot deliver the many votes they got from Mount Kenya, because Mount Kenya has actually shifted another way. And I'm sure he's thinking that the next place to get this candidate, the votes he's going to lose in Mount Kenya, could be in Western Kenya. And he's thinking by fronting Mudavadi will work. So I'm sure that even Sakaja knows very well that deputy president is not holding power the way he had. He's not wielding as much power. And I'm sure antagonism between them does not make sense. In fact, also, Sakaja is trying to get Gakuya. You know, Gakuya comes from Mount Kenya, and if he controls Nairobi, that could also give him a platform to actually compete for his seat as running mate for 2027. So there's not just the governor's seat in Nairobi, it's also about the deputy presidency and the entire who calls the shots in the whole thing. Remember also, Mudavadi is challenging to become the deputy party leader or UDA, and I'm sure that should actually be Sakaja as well. And there are many people looking for that position. So there's a lot of things there rather than just Nairobi seat.
Now, fair enough. Coming to you, Akili, from where you sit, is it an issue of, you know, taking control of the city, or is it an issue of power, as you know, even look at the 2027 general election in regards to the capital city?
It's an issue of stupidity. Because if I was governor today, I would endear myself to the people. So that regardless whether I'm chairman of UDA or Chama cha Maharagwe or Chama cha Wheelbarrow, Kenyans will vote for you, even if you came on an independent ticket, if you delivered to them. Simple. If I was governor of Nairobi, I wouldn't, for one term, I would never care if I even vied on an independent ticket with a laptop as my symbol, or a shoe, or a shoelace, or even one tooth as my... Because as long as you've delivered to Nairobians, trust you me, they will vote for you. So this person has realized that he has not delivered. And he has to hide under a party that he thinks will have a wave in 2027, because he feels that the president is going to run in 2027, and he thinks in his imagination that the president could win in 2027, and therefore that UDA will still carry the day in 2027. That's why he's hiding behind parties. When you are elected and you're the governor of Nairobi, it is foolishness to start looking for the comforts of chairmanship of a party. In fact, you're adding yourself another baggage that you don't need, because now you have to keep chairing Nairobi meetings for UDA and so on and so forth. It's a lot of nonsense. I think the primary focus should have been, be seen where the floods are, be seen where the people are, unclog the drainage, create employment for the people of Nairobi. You know, make the roads work. Now go to Mindibingu, go to some of those parts. Like the other day I was there near Afia Center. It's horrendous. Afia Center looks like a village somewhere, I don't know where. That area is horrible. And those people are paying taxes to this county. Just putting cabros has been a problem for this county. And you want to be chairman of UDA in Nairobi? My proposition to you, Sakaja, is if you ever listen, you still have a chance. If you forget the party, you forget everything else, and focus on Nairobians. Focus on making them feel your presence. Focus on doing their roads for them, their drainage. Focus on seeing that these small bursaries that come from the governor's office, instead of sending MCAs, be available. He has an opportunity if his focus is on the people and on what the people want. But he has forgotten who is the boss. And he's thinking the boss is the party. The boss is chairmanship. The boss is... And for Deputy President Rigiji, there's a time he stood at Bomas of Kenya and connected with very many Kenyans when he said, if we get rid of these fake qualifications, we'll reduce the workforce by about 10,000 people. The problem is he stopped at that. If he had taken that as his only mantra and run with it, and then in those places we make sure we start replacing with competent people who are result oriented. Unajua kuna watu ukiweka kwa office, you just start seeing a difference. In 2 years, a person who is effective brings a lot of change. The Michuki rules came 3 months after he was made minister. Then he came up with the Michuki rules. We live with them today. That's how you measure an effective leader. We had a town clerk, who did very well the other time when he made Nairobi start looking like it was something. Unfortunately, they jailed him and he died, and it was unfortunate. But if the people who are running Nairobi affairs only knew that Nairobians will vote for you on anything, even if your party symbol was a cup, a mug in the kitchen, or a fork and knife, because you've delivered to them. And it takes only 1 year. You do such good work that people will tell you, "Ato sisimame governor, simama president." And we lose it.
Now, fair enough. Let's talk about the issue of, the wage bill. Wakili has alluded to the DP talking about fake certificates and all that. Now, that came up during the, third annual wage bill conference at the Bomas of Kenya. And the president talked about how we need to reduce the wage bill. Now, that was followed, of course, by the All of Nation Approach Committee meeting with the doctors, and, of course, followed by the CS for Public Service, Moses Kuria, talking about how we now need to, relook at how government employs its public servants, and it now, leaning towards being on contractual basis, not on permanent and pensionable. First of all, Prof, does that, proposal hold any water from what you said?
First and foremost, as a strategist, you have to know why these people are doing this. Are they preparing you for something? You see, for example, and sorry to say this, when you saw the president declaring that General Gola will be in charge of inspecting schools, isn't it? Then you saw that he's going to be in charge of internal security in the North Rift. They were preparing for his assassination. So, when you see these people preparing you, they are preparing you for something. What are they preparing Kenyans for? And I can tell you this for a fact. If the president was keen on reducing wage bill, why employ CAS? Because that's actually increasing wage bill unnecessarily. Government has worked before that, isn't it? Why is it being added there? So they are not serious about it. But what are they trying to do? First of all, let me give the merits and the demerits of moving from permanent and pensionable to contractual. So for any Kenyan who is working for public service, mark my words, moving from permanent and pensionable to contractual has some advantages for you. Because all your benefits will be paid to you within the contract period. If you are given a 5 years contract, all your gratuity, everything will be paid within that period of time. Even your pension should be paid within, every benefit you get should be within 5 years. But if you go for permanent and pensionable, after you retire, normally you spend a lot of time trying to get your benefits, and now you're not working and you cannot even call a strike, you cannot do anything. So there's advantage that you can get your benefits within the contractual period. Then you can actually become more mobile. That's the second thing, because after you work for me for 5 years, maybe somebody wants to work for government to gain experience, gain network, then you move with that experience and network to somewhere else. So there's advantage in plans of employment contract moving from that place to the other thing. But the disadvantage is this: job insecurity. For example, William RUTO immediately became president. The Gazette noticed he was very busy. Did you notice that? People being unhired, some are being hired. People being fired. For example, so many professionals were unplugged from very many parastatals. And they put cronies, and these cronies are not delivering. For example, Mwaura, the chair of KRA, was known for even not paying taxes. Then he became the chair of collecting taxes. You can tell already why taxes cannot be collected. I have a friend of mine, actually my former schoolmate, he was sitting in boards in Mombasa, he was removed. So many people are plucked. Actually, Uhuru's appointees who are running very good parastatal, like example, Kenya Pipeline, were unplugged. So that was done. Now this wave of now moving from permanent and pension to contractual is to prepare again to pluck other people from this public sector organization, people they don't like. Then they replace them with people they like. And I want to tell my brother Fanyamambo, do you know why the MD of Kenya Airport Authority cannot be fired? They wanted to fire the other guy and put their own person. And their person is there, messing up now, they cannot be fired. If you look at the government has been, people are putting cronies and if you like supporters who either campaign or bought the position. For example, some PSS, when you are applying for PSS, some of us wanted to apply, but we are told that if you apply, you have to pay 500,000 shillings for you to be shortlisted. So you paid 500,000 shillings to be shortlisted. So why should you apply? If you have no job, a young person there, can you afford 500,000 shillings to apply and then you pay for shortlisting? Shortlisting, not getting the job. Then now, for you to get the job, how much do you have to pay? You remember that will be now a tall order. So some people bought them either by campaigning before the election, or some of them bought with actual money. And this again, they want to sell these positions in government. So I can tell you, you will see them, they'll be for sale. So those people who cannot pay will be shipped out. The people who are being targeted, who are opposing government, will be given warning letters. And if you're only 5 years contract, it's easy to fire you than if you're permanent and pensionable. So according to me, there's advantage and disadvantages. Now, as far as I'm concerned, we are going to call a press conference with youth, unemployed youth, so that as some people will be transitioning from here to there, want to tell them now to give these jobs to young people, because young people are the ones who are suffering with unemployment. Is there any plan, not just to lower the wage bill, but also offer these opportunities to young people who are unemployed? Because everybody sends me a message, Professor, get me a job in Kenya Kwanza government. So as far as I'm concerned, it should also act as an avenue to bring in new blood into the public service, especially young people, men and women, to also get opportunity to serve in the public service.
Now, Prof, hold on to that, because I want to ask, Wakili, even as you wrap up this particular conversation. Now, the president talked about reducing the wage bill, and now the CS comes up with this idea in what he says is, as well trying to reduce the wage bill, and because they say it is really ballooning. But are they really being genuine? Because on one hand, they're talking about reducing the wage bill. On the other hand, CISs will now be hired at a basic salary of around 780,000 shillings. So is it an issue of double speak, really?
Number one, let us reduce the wage bill by stopping to pay people we never voted for. We put 500 million into the office of the First Lady, a person I never voted for, you never voted for, nobody voted for the First Lady. And we have put another 700 million in what we are calling the office of the Deputy First Lady. Again, people that Kenyans never voted for. That's 1.2 billion in total. Intern doctors only need 1.2 billion for all of them in the whole country. I keep asking Kenyans, if you're a city hopper driver, has your employer ever paid your wife because you're a city hopper driver? If you work in the media here, you wake up this morning and you come here, has Lookuptv ever paid your wife because you work for Lookuptv? So why are Kenyans comfortable with paying the wives of politicians because we elected their husbands? Why? And not just paying them, putting 1.2 billion. So if you are serious about reducing wage bill, this special woman to whom we give 500 million, this special woman to whom we give 700 million and we never voted for, you see that's a bigger problem than CASs. Now there's one Kenyan to whom we are giving 500 million and Kenyans are okay. And another one we are giving 700 million and Kenyans are okay. How? We never voted for them. And then I want Asbasi to change the law in this country so that everybody who is employed today can have it as by right that their employer should pay their own wives. So that if I'm employed, wherever I'm employed, my employer should also pay my wife for me being employed. If that doesn't make sense, then it also doesn't make sense for us to put 500 million plus 700 million into the offices of the wives of the president and the wives of the deputy president. Because then why? Now, CASs, we've not had them since this government started. Why do we need them now? What is it they are going to do? And I saw some of the proposals. Remember that time, some of the names that were given. People who have completely got nothing new. If, say, for example, you were looking at somebody like Professor Kivutha Kibwana and telling him, we want to give you an appointment in government, you'd have this feeling there's something new he's bringing. This guy is brilliant. He's run Makueni so well. Let us bring him in government at whatever cost, because he's probably going to save us billions. But now look at some of the names I don't even want to mention on national TV. You want to create a position for this one, yeah, to come and do what for the country? They can't even run a cattle dip. Why do you want them to be a CAS? You know, there are people you would hear in this country and you'd be like, wait, they want to put that person in government, yeah, whatever it costs. Like now, look at somebody like Mwangi of Equity Bank, who's been voted World Entrepreneur of the Year. World Entrepreneur of the Year 3 times, perhaps even more. If Mwangi of Equity was to join government, and people hear that this person is about to join government as a CAS for maybe whatever, finance, something, we would say yes. But some of the names that are being proposed, I can't even mention on national TV, would not even bring an idea as to how Kenya, so it's a waste of time. Okay. But now putting them on contract, why don't we start by putting Moses Kuria on contract as an experiment? We put him on a 3-month contract that is renewable. Then we start putting cabinet on contract, 6 months renewable, without permanent and pensionable and without benefits. Let's start by putting our cabinet on contract. If it works, then now we go to civil servants. You know, it's good to do a pilot. So let's do a pilot. Let's put our cabinet on contract. And then after our cabinet delivers by being on contract, we can go to civil servants.
Now, your parting shot, Prof.
Okay, mine will be this way. Let me just comment on the wage bill. The releasing on the wage bill is not the issue. Because I think we are trying to address the wrong problem. And why this is not the issue is, Brian, do you want to be there as young people who will come back to a government that pays less salary? Don't you think the work of a government is to increase more jobs and ensure people can earn more salaries to live the life they wish to? Or do you want your salary to be reduced? Because the only way to reduce wage bill either is to cut jobs or lower salaries. Because I don't see the other way around it.
Or remove ghost workers.
Or ghost workers really should not be there, but they are not focusing on it. It's a way to steal money from us. But I'm trying to say now, let me ask you, Brian, yes. Do you know that the the per capita income for Kenya is $1,600? And do you know that of Singapore is 66,176? Means that on average income is $66,000 for someone in Singapore. In Kenya, average is 1,600. I mean per capita income. What I'm talking about, the issue of per capita income here is that we want to grow our per capita income so that people can earn more money, isn't it? Rather than lowering it. And by us reducing the wage bill, either by cutting jobs or reducing salaries, we are making Kenyans poorer. We need to have productive people. Like he's saying, James Mwangi coming to government will be more productive. But you have some other people coming to government will be less productive. So we are having dead wood in government, dead wood. People who cannot produce anything, but they're earning money. If you look at the entire Ministry of Education, who could not just know what floods was going to do? The whole Ministry of Education that has the highest budget allocation, only after this budget we are going to read in that defense will take more budget from the exchequer than education. How many people are employed in education? How many people are called directors, head of research, head of what, head of mitigation, head of strategy, head of planning? All those people could not just save our children death in the flood, yet we are paying them a lot of money. So for me, the issue is not that one. And let me give my now closing remarks by saying this. For me, it's a good thing we have William RUTO as the president of Kenya. And for the first time, I agree when Kenyans say the leaders are chosen by God. Actually, RUTO is chosen by God. God gave RUTO to Kenyans to make Kenyans learn a lesson. Unfortunately, I want people to do serious civic education so that they can know that for the first time, actually we have the most qualified liar and con man running the country. People need to know that so that when it comes to 2027, they cannot choose a con man and a liar who will give you fake fertilizer in terms of marbles to run your own farming. You've conned some farmers who are now going to have poverty for a whole year. This message needs to come strongly. I'm sorry to say this on live television, but it's the truth. I'm ready to die for it. That Kenyans now need to have civic education to know how much have they suffered at the hands of this government. Then lastly, we have been telling people, for example, when I told people like me, young like myself, Fanya Mambo and the rest can really lead this country. They say you don't have experience. We cannot trust ourselves with people who have experience of mismanagement. We rather trust people who have experience of managing well, and this is where the country will go. So if you trust experienced conmen, experienced liars, the results are what you are seeing in the floods and everything else. If you trust people who have made the right decisions and made in career from very, let's say, Fanyamambo from very humble background to become a good lawyer in this country, that's the way we go forward.
Okay, anything you want to say?
Yes, I'd like to say that as we sit right here today, this country will not move anywhere with the brains that are at the top. Something needs to happen. The brains that are there have proven that they cannot do anything for this country. And to continue to insist and to expect from them, nothing will happen. And I was worried deeply. I used to think that President RUTO is a bad person. Now I'm forgiving myself and I'm forgiving him. Because I'm thinking the voters are worse. When I saw them queuing for UDA elections, after what UDA has done to this country, Upper Court to Dagoretti, there are people who woke up at 6 in the morning to queue to be voted for, to become part of this party. And they dragged their people and stopped their people from working so that they can go and participate in the election of a party in flooded schools. I kind of feel that the voter is worse. And the voter needs help more than even the government. So I kind of resign from now even fighting this administration. And I think I need to start looking at the voter and asking, are you normal? You wake up in the morning to queue and you put up a poster with your name on it and the wheelbarrow photo. And you want to become part of that and to be voted in your ward, in your area. Then I think the problem is bigger than what we think. Because if there are people who are still thinking that way, in my area in Dagoretti, then I cannot even begin to defend them. I think I have wasted a lot of time trying to fight for them, only for them to wake up one morning and go and say they want to be part of this administration. Then you look at them and say, I am sorry that I even talked about what is important or what I thought was important for you. I think what is good for you is for you to be members of that party, to carry that wheelbarrow symbol for yourselves, and to be told that you are the villager representative for SMEs in your area. I don't know what that means. And so many other funny positions I saw them going for. I worry deeply when I look at Kenyans. I would have thought that after this government has done what it has done to them, they would not want any association with it. But the fact that they are queuing and they are offering themselves and they are voting to be part of this administration, then I take a sit back and let me see what it will take for them to learn that this government is actually making their lives impossible. And if so far they haven't learned, if even the floods have not taught them, if seeing a helicopter delivering ballot materials to a school, the reason they are taking a helicopter to a school is because nothing else could get there. But if seeing a helicopter coming with ballot materials and seeing none with food or a mattress or sugar or unga doesn't change the way they think about the party, they still remain in that queue and want to be voted for and to vote for that party, then you can tell the problem is bigger than President William Ruto. The problem is on the ground, it's with the people. And they are okay with the helicopter having left, and the only thing it left is ballot material. If seeing policemen available in those polling stations to man mtu asiibiwe kura juu anataka kuwa dam representative ama sijui kama ni kettle dip representative of the area, and those policemen are not available to help a child starting on a roof, and that doesn't change their hearts, then I kind of feel that the problem is bigger than the government. The problem is with the people, and let us leave it to them until they are sure that they won't change.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for gracing this show this particular morning.
Thank you very much.
To see you again.
Sure, thank you
very much. Well, that was the morning drift for you this particular moment. And just before we wrap up, the figures that we have at the moment is that we understand at least the number of people who lost their lives in Maimari has risen to 71. That is according to what the Deputy President says. And of course, the number of those who lost their lives to the flooding situation in the country stands at 166, even as the President is set to convene a cabinet meeting to discuss the issue of flooding and how to go forward with the situation right here at State House, Nairobi. Now, we'll be keeping you up to date with that and, of course, many other stories across the country. But, of course, the flooding situation continues to make headlines, and we'll be looking at the situation across all the 47 counties. As much as they say 34 of the 47 counties have been adversely affected by floods. Until then, you can keep it Lookuptv. Do visit our website www.lookuptv.co.ke just to get an overview of the stories making headlines not only here in the country but as well across the borders. Do have yourself a wonderful day, and like always, God bless.